Let's look at the Everest. It's race 7 at 4:15 local time on Saturday. Already this morning, James McDonald-Simon told us he'd prefer to have it soft or worse because it does take those horses out of the race that won't handle it. Who do you think leads?
I think it's the perfect scenario for J-Mac this time. The times Eduardo's beaten Nature Strip, he's had the chance to sort of stalk him, where on the weekend now Nature Strip drawn to his outside. Perfect barrier. It just allows James to get him in his free-flowing state. Eduardo's the quickest horse we have in the first sort of 100, 200 metres. So I think Nash leads. It's the grand final. I know Nature Strip has beaten him when taking a sit on him, but I just don't think they've got any choice, really. Eduardo takes it up. Nature Strip lands outside. Who jostles for positions behind the speed is going to be interesting. I think Wild Ruler is in deep trouble. He's in deep trouble with a wet track regardless. You got Embrace the Loss and Running in Home Affairs. I think they'll sort of jostle for those positions behind the speed. Classique Legend looks to get the perfect run on the map. But I do think it's going to come down to the two up the front, Eduardo and Nature Strip. They look to be the leading contenders, and the map looks great for them.
Is there any belief that maybe the 3-year-old could lead? Could they? Les Bridge threw it out there yesterday. It was intriguing because you listened to Les, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he said maybe the 3-year-old goes forward and takes it up from an inside draw with no weight.
I think Les he's playing the old 1-2 there, because if Home Affairs gets in a speed battle with Eduardo and Nature Strip, it just plays out beautifully for his big fellas. Yeah. So I initially thought possibly he's got the barrier to do it, but as mentioned, Eduardo is just so fast early. And if Nash wants to lead, good luck. So I think they will want to lead there tomorrow. He was so good first up, and second up, he should improve again. So I think they'll want to find out and take luck out of the equation. And if they want to lead, as mentioned, he should get there pretty comfortably.
What's your view on it, Dean?
Yeah, look, Eduardo's the best barrier horse in Australia, and he's got the best barrier jockey in Nashville Willis. So I think he'll jump out and he should be able to get across and dominate, which I think is what he wants to do. I suspect they'll take a sit on Home Affairs. I think they'll sit third in the trail, and Nature Strip will come across and stalk him, and it'll be quite similar to the TJ Smith in the autumn.
So in your view, Dean, which ones do you take out, given the soft ground or the heavy ground? Which ones do you rule out of winning the Everest?
I think the wet track, assuming we're talking about a soft 7 or worse, probably even a soft 6 or worse, I think, probably means Trekking can't win. Wild Ruler's completely out of play. I don't think Libertini can handle any sort of wet going either. And I think it makes it difficult even, for a horse like Home Affairs, just second up off an 1,100 metre run. I think one of the interesting little factors, looking at the last sort of 14 races, last 10 TJ Smiths and the last 4 Everests, there's been 54 horses either first up or second up, and only one's won, and that's Santa Ana Lane. And Santa Ana Lane seemed to be the only horse really who could actually run well second up in these sort of 1,200, Group 1s, and I'm classing the Everest as a Group 1. So, these are really brutally run, top quality 1,200 metre races, and I think you need to be fit. And what's interesting is you got quite a few on the market here: Classique Legend and Libertini first up, and then you got Eduardo Guitra second up, as well as Home Affairs. And I think if it's a strongly run 1,200 in this sort of class, that's another piece that makes life a lot harder for them.
In regard, Simon, Classique Legend, the vulnerability has to be there. Les saying yesterday, I'll be holding my breath the last 80 metres, and particularly if it's first up on a heavy, if it's soft to heavy.
Yeah, I'm going to say Classique Legend can't win. I'll be staggered if he's able to win that on Saturday. It'll be one of the best training performances we've ever seen. To not have a run in close to a year, he's coming off a bleed, coming back from Hong Kong. I had a quick look at, we've sent about 30 horses to Hong Kong in the last 20 years for the Group 1s, and only 2 have won first up when they come back. Sunlight and Buffering were the 2. So it's certainly not easy, and I think he's running headfirst in, these are one of the best sprints we'll see in some time. Nature Strip, Eduardo, they're world class. So if he's to beat them on the weekend off what he's had to endure in terms of the setbacks, no trial, he's only had trials, hasn't raced, it'd be unbelievable. So I'll certainly be losing on the race if Classique Legend can win. But at the same time, I'll be cheering Les Bridge because it'll be an unbelievable training effort.
It will be. The market just starting to change a little bit. Classique Legend had been favourite all the way along. Now this morning, it's joint favourite with Nature Strip. So we're starting maybe to see a true market, if I can put it across that way, Simon, that people are now only days away. We're seeing some weather and they're starting to think whether Classique can actually do it.
Sorry, Andrew, we've just lost audio. We didn't catch any of that.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Just nod your head. Can you hear me now? No, you've lost me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me, Dean. Okay. So, Dean, do you think the market is starting to work around now that Nature Strip will end up the favourite in the race?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, he's starting to firm and you sort of get 4.20 now. I think he could well end up similar to his TJ Smith price, where they really crunched him late in that race, and he sort of ended up he was $3.50 into $3. I think he'll certainly get into sort of $3.50 by Saturday, assuming they take a set against the likes of Classique Legend and a few of these other runners like Wild Ruler and Libertini and the likes, who probably they just won't have a price if the track's really wet.
Okay, the one that we haven't mentioned in this is Masked Crusader. We know how quickly this horse can let down, Simon. What's your view on this sort of ground?
Yeah, I think the key issue for Masked Crusader on the weekend is they just haven't really put him into the race at all. Come back, and Barrier 9 just says they're going to go back again. So I think Classique Legend's going to struggle to run down Eduardo and Nature Strip, and Masked Crusader is going to settle 2 or 3 pairs further back than Classique. So I don't think Masked Crusader can win either. I know taking a set against 2 of the market leaders, but I just struggle to see him being able to pick them up. They're not going to come back to him as easy as Standout did. It looked really good, his win last start, but in terms of the actual figures and the sectionals he ran, it wasn't that impressive, or not to the level he's going to need to run to on the weekend. We thought he would off his first up win. It was really impressive at Caulfield, but he just hasn't taken that next step. He might, Team Hawk's Supreme Grand Final trainers, but the map for me is the big query for Masked Crusader. You have to be an out-and-out superstar to stand up these horses and run them down. I'm just not sure he's at that level.
He's got to jump better, hasn't he? I mean, but then if he races closer, you don't want to take away that powerful finish. It's slightly complicated for Tommy, but Tommy Berry, who takes the ride. All right, we want to look at the Caulfield Cup, so let's just get your overview on the Everest, Simon. Who are the top 2 or 3 in the market as it stands, or 2 or 3 in the race for you?
Yeah, I'd say for me, Nature Strip, I agree with Dean. I think he'll continue to firm. I think if you want to be in his corner, I'd be backing him today because as this rain keeps coming, I expect the market to keep trending towards Nature Strip. So he's on top. I think Eduardo's a big chance. I know Query at a strong 1,200, but on what he did fresh, he's a better horse second up. He leads, and he'll handle the going. Happy to be against Classique Legend, and Guitar is probably the one for us that in terms of the market, we'd have him a bit closer to the top 2 than what the current market has. So it's Nature Strip for me. I think perfect preparation from Chris Waller. He's mirrored what he did last preparation, won fresh, came off at a touch. The 14-day break between runs into his second run is the thing you got to look at. When he's had more than 3 weeks between runs, that's when he really explodes, and it's the perfect prep with 4 weeks on the weekend. So Nature Strip on top, and I'd say Eduardo's the danger.
Okay, what about you, Dean? Your overview of the Everest?
Yeah, I do think Nature Strip's going to be extremely hard to beat. I think he's got everything in his favour here. He's had the perfect prep. The wet track really enhances his chances, and I think he's extremely hard to beat. I do think Masked Crusader, if it's not too wet, is a potential danger. And just in the TJ Smith, he was pretty unlucky. He could have got fairly close to Nature Strip in that race. So I like that he's 4th up. I like that he's rock hard fit for this race. I think the best roughie is probably the Inferno at sort of $26. I think he's the only one at sort of double figure odds who could surprise. He's won Group 1 over a mile. He'll be hitting the line really hard. And I think at the value is probably the only other piece. And I'd say Eduardo and Guitar are probably the only others who can win, in my opinion.
Simon Dinopoulos, you were the first to put Inferno in the map around the Everest, and you've left it out. You haven't mentioned it.
No, I hope he runs well. I agree with Dean. He's a good chance to run on into the placings. I'm just concerned with horses giving them a big start. They don't come back to you as easy as you hope. But
yeah,
for Cliff and Connections, it's great to see him in the race. And, if he can perform well on Saturday, then, he's going to be running well in our races for a long time. So 1,200 is a big tick. I was surprised how well he's been running over 1,000. So fingers crossed he can measure up.
He's about $21 at Bet365 right now. $4.40 Nature Strip is the joint favourite there with Classique Legend. To the Caulfield Cup we go now, guys. And Dean, I'll come to you first. Incentivise the barrier draw. Everyone goes, oh, shock, horror. He can't win from that draw. Moody says this morning there's more positive than negative. How are you reading it?
Yeah, look, it's a little bit more work for Brett Preble to do. He's going to have to find a position and see how aggressive he wants to be. We've sort of got, not a heap of speed in this race. Possibly a horse like Quick Thinker might push forward. Got sort of Homesman there. The likes of maybe Delphi that are sort of on paces. But you actually got a race where it's a fair number of back markers. And so I don't think there's a lot of work that Incentivise is going to need to do to sort of get across there. And, I presume they're just going to be positive, try to ride him like the best horse and probably sit outside the leader. I don't think that the barrier draw is ultimately what's going to beat Incentivise.
You just think it's being third up on a wet track at 2,400?
Yeah, look, I think what's interesting with the Caulfield Cup, the overseas horses have been able to come up, obviously, off a break, and they're used to doing that and win it. But with the Australian-trained horses in the last 10 years, the only ones that have won have been at least fourth up. So Incentivise, there's a bit of a challenge there. There's another interesting little piece that geldings has been 90 geldings run the last 10 years and only one win. But 6 winners have been Entires and 3 of them mares. So he's got a couple of little challenges there. He's got that wet track third up. It's obviously not as though he can't win, but my personal opinion, in a race like this, the capacity field, particularly with a wet track that brings a few into them, $2.50 is pretty skinny, and I'd rather be laying him than backing him personally.
Peter Moody saying before he joined my stable, he never used to lead. They've been leading because they've been slow races, those wait for ages. So we'll wait and see. Let's go to you, Simon. Give us your thoughts around the Caulfield Cup, the main hopes.
Yeah, I think Incentivise is the obvious. I think barrier 20, if we do get this rain by the end of the day, it's probably not going to be bad for him at the start. I think, probably be out in the best ground. So from a weight-adjusted ratings perspective, what we do at Timeform, he almost comes out on top, which is a huge tick when you are looking at horses at the top of the weights. It's rare that it happens in these handicaps, so he's obviously got strong claims. What price he gets to, that's going to be the query. I think, agree with Dean, inside 2 to 1 is probably too short, just with the unknowns on the wet track. But, they bet better than 2 to 1 on Saturday. I dare say I'll be fairly interested in his chances. I think Montefilia is the one that's probably been ignored by the market, certainly from a ratings perspective. That Metropolitan win rates well for us. She looks well placed at the weights and she handles the going. So there was a query on her getting 2,400 prior to the Metropolitan, but, a great Hugh Bowman ride. And she was too good, middle draw, perfect. I think, she looks overs at $17. I think she's certainly capable of running a big race. Nonconformist also jumps off the page on the quick backup, good setup, going onto a testing track. He's obviously gone to a new level. This preparation, the wide draw, you'd imagine he rolls over, possibly with Incentivise. I don't think the draw is too bad for him. They look to be the two, and Delphi as well. Obviously looks to have, solid claims. Not often Damien Oliver rides down in the weights, and that's a good a push as any. And again, the quick backup looks to be a good setup for him going onto a testing track, even though it is sort of an unknown. But they'd be the main 4 for me. Interesting with Incentivise, I suppose the one knock, I was hoping we get a dry track, because if that's the case and he won well, I thought there was a good chance he'd back up in the Cox Plate, where now, a testing, if we do get onto a heavy track, 2,400 metres, it's unlikely to see him back up in that. But look, it's a great Caulfield Cup. There was a chance, as mentioned, that Incentivise is going to jump odds on, and now we've got a real open race and it looks a great betting race.
I'm glad you mentioned Montefilia. David Payne's horses don't get too many pushes because he's low-key, so therefore the horses are low-key and don't get a lot of PR. But I reckon she's a live chance. $17 right now gets a gun rider, Jai McNeil, rode her on Tuesday to get a feel. I really like her. What about you, Dean?
Yeah, look, I think there's a few here that have a chance of toppling Incentivize. The Chosen One, he ran third in this race last year. He was only beaten a length by the likes of Very Elegant and Anthony Van Dyke. And then he ran fourth in the Melbourne Cup. He's been flying this prep. He was third in the Fian, and last start really flew home. Was ridden really soft and just hit the line very, very quickly in the Herbert Power. He was carrying 59 there, and he ran the quickest last 800, last 600, last 400 of the day. So he's absolutely flying, the Chosen One. Murray Baker, he knows how to win the Group 1s over here, and I think he's a really, really big chance. Explosive Jack's another that, this wet track and just tipping up to 2,400 metres. We know how the Karen Ma horses really jump out of the ground once they get up to this trip. He won the ATC and SA Derbies as a 3-year-old, and I really liked his run in the Turbo when he was fifth. He ran the quickest last 800. He went quicker than Incentivize there. Barrier 1, not really ideal, but we'll just have to see how the track plays. But I think he's a live chance. And Young Werther, ran really well in the Turnbull. He ran sort of second to Incentivize against the bias. He's third up here, but Danny O'Brien has a great record in this race. He won with Master O'Reilly, Quinella that year. He managed to get Vow and Declare to run second, and it's second up. So I think they are three of the really key chances in the race, and probably a couple of really big odds if the rain really comes and it's sort of slow 7 to heavy. A horse like Quick Thinker, I think could actually bob up here once he gets up to that sort of staying trip. He's won a Derby, he's won a Chairman's on wet tracks. That's where he really excels. And even a horse like Charm Star at huge odds, I think, ran placed in a couple of Oaks as a 3-year-old, and had to jump from a mile to 2,400 last start. Had no luck, only beaten 3 lengths, 50 kgs, and it's sort of $90. I think even she could run a little race.
There's a few there that you can think about, but in the end, the class prevails. The cream will come to the top, Dean. Don't worry, Montefilia is going to be bursting down the outside to win the Caulfield Cup, and David Payne will be watching it all from Sydney. So let's wait